Good morning everyone, and welcome to this Metaphorix' third webinar session of 2016. Today we'll be looking at financial reporting, account schedules and exporting to Excel. First of all, we will be looking at some standard financial reports that we can gain from Navision. Today we'll be looking at financial reporting, account schedules and exporting to Excel. First of all, we'll have a look at what is already available to us through the standard on-screen displays and hard copy reporting. We will then move on to have a look at account schedules, and we'll be looking at an existing account schedule and seeing how we can print that up. Then we will look at creating a new one and investigate the various areas of the account schedule, rows and columns, how we overview and how we can drill down into our ledger entries. We will then add into that the ability to add on our additional dimensions, known as shortcut dimensions, through something called analysis views. So let us start. As I said earlier, there are a number of different reports and on-screen functions that already provide good information for us. So we will spend the next few minutes taking a look at what is already available for us. First thing I'd like to show you is from our chart of accounts. We have our standard chart of accounts here, and of course I am using the Cronus database, so titles, dates, etc. might look a little bit strange, being a demonstration database. So we will go initially and we will use in the main home ribbon at the top the GL balance by dimension. When we click on this selection, we're presented with a screen where we can make various selections. We have the ability to show or decide what we're going to show in the lines, and in this case I'm going to use the GL account, and at the moment I want to show you through a period, so I will check and pick up the period selection in the columns. I can enter a date filter if I just want to view it over a certain period, and I can select which GL accounts I want to view. So I will pick up the year of 2016, purely because this is a demonstration database and there isn't an awful lot of data to play around with. I have the selection here to say what types of amounts do I want to see. Do I want to see actual budgets, etc., whether I want to round. I have the option here to show column name, and this refers to the matrix option fast tab at the bottom here, which reflects what I'm going to be looking at. In this case, I'm saying I want to view by month. I have a choice: day, week, month, quarter, year. What my calendar is, either system calendar or accounting period, whether I want to see net change or balance at date, and the column set. So you'll notice when I tick or untick the show column name, the headings will actually display different values, so I can choose what I want to look at. Now the temptation is always just to say OK on here, but please don't do that, as it will only just close that screen down for you. So we pop up to our home ribbon and we do show matrix. And so here I can see I've selected my GL accounts, which in this case is just my expense accounts. And then I have a total amount and then broken down over the year. And of course I can change the details on this. One way that I might want to view my expenses is through my dimensions, and in this database I'm just going to go back a screen. within the Cronus database, the two global dimensions are project or department. So I'm going to select department this time as my heading. I will leave everything else the same. I'm still going to look at it as across the whole year, although obviously I could change that to a month if I wished. Show matrix, and so in this point I can now see that all my expenses are now split between my departments, which obviously is extremely good feedback. Okay, so that's standard. Just simply by going from your chart of accounts, you can get to that sort of information quite easily. Additionally, there are standard reports. And so I'm going to have a look this time at just my report called Trial Balance by Period. Again, it can be any report, but just to give you a feeling for what's available. You will always get presented on any report that you run within Navision with a dialogue page that asks for some information, some feedback from you. In this case, it's asking me for a start date. As I said earlier, I'm in a 2016 database, so I will use 2016. I can choose whether I want to round, whether I want to indent, and also I can choose whether I want to see all of the accounts or not by just using normal Navision filtering rules. I can also filter on my dimensions if I wish to as well. But I'm just going to go into preview now, just so we can get a feel for the types of reports that are available. Pop down to the bottom there, and you can see in this particular report, because it is by period, I have got my 12 months going across the top from the 1st of January, because that's the start date I entered, and then all the details of my various accounts in my chart of accounts. So as standard, we have lots of good things that we can look at. But what I'd like to do now is to go through the account schedules functionality, because that does give us a different level of being able to look and report on our chart of accounts. Now, I happen to be in the Accounting Manager Role Centre, so my link to the account schedules in here is just on the analysis ribbon at the top here. And I can see I have account schedules. Of course, as long as you have permissions, you can go into your search box top right hand side if your role centre doesn't support that particular icon. So what we'll do first is we'll go into account schedules, and you'll notice there are quite a number already set up here within our Cronus database. So I just want to have a look at one for the moment so that you can have an idea of what an account schedule is all about. So we'll have a look at this one called Profit and Loss. I can go into the overview and I can see the details of my account schedule as I have set up. What I'd like to do now though is, from a printing point of view, I'd like to show you what the result can look like, so that then we can create our own account schedule and incorporate some of the various criteria to give the report layout that we want. So just simply go to print. Because I'm in the overview, my dialog box is already set to the settings as per my account schedule. So I will simply go to preview, and we can see we have our account schedule details at the top explaining what criteria we've used. We've seen the date filter here, and then we have our columns laid out across the page, and again we'll be covering what columns look like and how we can create our own. But we have our rows, our GL accounts down the left hand side here, and then the columns as I say, that we will be creating later. You'll notice some of the items are underlined. So what we will do is we will have a look now at how we can create our own account schedule and how we can create the columns. So I will just close that down, press escape to come back a screen. And what I'll first do though is give you an idea of how that looked anyway in terms of the setup. So I'll just pop into account schedule setup, and you'll notice there's our rows with the various details. We have a column that says totaling type, what type of account do we want to use. We can have posting accounts, totaling accounts. The difference between the two being the totaling accounts in your chart of accounts relate to, in effect, your end totals. So total accounts, and then in the totaling column we have the GL account that we want to produce into this particular row. We then have the row type, and we can determine whether we want to see the net change, balance at date, or beginning balance. Whether we want to see the net amount or debit or credit amount, and of course that will wholly depend on what type of account it is that you're producing on that row. We then also have the ability to show the opposite sign, because you've probably noticed sales in Navision actually appear as a negative, which can be slightly misleading. So here we can choose to actually show the opposite sign so that sales would come through as a positive. We then have some options here to determine how we want, when we print out the document, how we want the lines to look. We can choose whether we want to actually show the line, yes or no. We can choose if any column not 0, only when positive, or only when negative. We can also decide at the change of the account whether we want to throw to a new page when we print out. And then we've got some other attributes here, whether we want to embolden, underline, and or italic. So now we've had a look at that, we'll go and create one ourselves. So come back a screen by just pressing the escape key, and I will just simply click on new, and as I normally do in such training sessions, I will call mine Meta Profit and Loss. One more S please. I can choose which default columns I want to use, but I won't do that at the moment because we'll actually create the columns in this session. And you'll notice you can also attach to what these things called analysis views. That's for our additional dimensions, but again I will discuss that later. So once I have created my account schedule heading, I can then go to edit account schedule, and now here I can in effect manually create my rows by just coming in, typing my row number. The reason we use row numbers is because later on we might need to use those rows to perform formula calculations, adding particular rows together, etc. I can give it a description, so profit and loss, and so on and so forth. In this case, this would be just the heading, so I wouldn't need to select anything further here. Then I can go down and pick up my various GL accounts. Well, of course, that's lovely, but quite a task to go and create that all manually. So Navision's there to help us by using this function called Insert GL Accounts. So when I click on that icon, it presents me with our GL account list, and then I can come into here and select which accounts I want to bring through. So if I just scroll down to my income statement. Now, in terms of selecting, it's very, very simple. I can, with my cursor in the very, very first column here, just click to highlight and click and drag to highlight lines. If I want to, what I call cherry pick, I can, using my finger on the control key on the keyboard, say I want that one, etc., and so on, and then pick up as many lines as I want. So I have full choice as to what I want to bring through. But for this exercise, I'm just going to be a bit lazy, so I'm just going to travel all the way down to the bottom, and then I simply just have to say OK, and all of those lines are brought through for me. Much, much easier than having to do them individually. But if this is a working document, so at this point I can now choose, if I wish, to remove lines, add additional lines, etc. Now, I also want to point out, you'll notice in the row number, and I'll just get rid of that heading now, just right click and delete line, because I've got my headings here anyway. So the row number here, 61110, is actually the GL account that I'm asking to be brought through onto my account schedule. So when you do the insert GL accounts, it will automatically populate the row number with the GL account number. It's also quite clever in as much that it knows that the GL account 6110 is a posting account, and that 6195 here is a totaling account. So we can just prove and check that. In fact, if I go to 6195, make that a bit quicker, we can, sorry, I should have done 6110, shouldn't I? Okay, so there we are. There's our sales retail, which we have here, posting accounts, and then the 6195, which is our total sales. It is an end total, and that is why it has come through as a totaling account. So now I can continue and give various attributes to my account schedule. I can change the row type and the amount type if I wish. I said earlier about sales figures showing as a negative, as standard within the vision. So what I would do here is just come down and make all of those positive, and so on and so forth. Whether I want to show this particular item on the printout, whether I want to, at the change of perhaps a particular part within my chart of accounts, I might want to throw to a new page. And then I have the choice for things like headings. I can say I might want them emboldened with my total line here, emboldened, maybe underlined, which we saw earlier in the early report, and even if I want to, I can make that line italic as well. As I say, this is a working document, so if I decide that I don't want everything that's here, so let's have a little play there. I can say, actually, I don't want any more accounts. So I can just simply come down and highlight them, Control Delete to remove them. Other things, even though you do use the insert GL accounts, it doesn't mean that you have to stick with the row numbers as here. You can renumber them. And also you can move accounts around. So for example, if you didn't want a particular section where it is because of the format of your chart of accounts, you can simply just highlight the details, copy rows, and then I can add them just by right clicking and paste rows. Quite simple. I'm going to leave them where they are because it does make sense to have them there, but you have full control over what you want. And when I was saying about the rows, I could come in here and make that row 100. Oops. Need another row there. 160. Okay. Now, depending on how I want this report to look, if I was going to admit, for example, we have some sales here that are job sales. So I could say I don't want to include them on this particular report. So again, I'm just going to delete those lines. But my problem there would be is this line here, which is my totaling account, if you remember, that's going to go to my chart of accounts, account number 6195, and just bring me through that total. Well, of course, that total includes those two job lines that I've just deleted. So in this case, what I would want to do would be to change this so that I made this now a formula. And in this case, I can simply say I want to add rows 100 to, in this case, 159, and that gives me some space to enter additional lines if I might want to. So again, just using normal Navision syntax, line 100 to 159. Okay, so that's our little account schedule, and just to show you what it looks like, we can go to the overview, and there are all the details coming through. Now, we haven't seen the columns yet. At the moment, this is using some column layouts called default. So let's have a look at our columns, and we can have a look at the details. So in the ones that we're looking at the moment, we can see that you can have column numbers, heading. You don't have to have column numbers. If you're not using formula, then you don't need to use it. And again, we have some choices in terms of what we call the columns, what the column type is. So again, we can do formula, net change, balance at date, beginning balance, etc., etc. We can say whether we want to bring in just GL entries or if this particular column is going to relate to budget entries. And we can say whether we want to show the net amount, debit amount, or credit amount. And you'll notice also we have the ability to add, and again in the Cronus database, we have the two global dimensions, those two dimensions that travel around Navision every time we post anything. Within Cronus, it's our department and our project total. And then we have our formula, just as we saw in the account schedule themselves. We can add columns together, multiply, etc. Again, we have the choice to show opposite signs here rather than on the lines if we wanted to. And we can do comparison date formulas, etc. So what we'll do is we will create a new set of columns. And again, I'm just going to call this meta, and I will do it now from a dimensional level. So I'll just call it department. Oops. And I'm not going to attach an analysis view at this moment. And then go to edit column layout. So here I can give my column number. From habit, I just always do. As I say, if I'm not using a formula, I don't actually have to do that. I could say total this month, and I have my choice of what column type, net change, balance, etc. What do I want to see? Do I want to see the entries or budgets? Well, I'm going to see my entries here, and then I'm going to do my net amount, and then here I'm going to say that I want to see actually for a particular department. So for our departments, we have 3 within the Cronus, which is admin, production and sales. So I'm going to choose admin there. So on this line, I'm going to just change that. Oh, if I could spell correctly, administration this month. Okay, come down to my line 2, which is column number 2, and I'm just going to do an F8 there to repeat above, and this time put in production and pick my production, and then last but not least F8 is my sales figures. Pop along here to sales. So quite simply I can pick up my globals here. I might also want to add here total or departments, and so in here I'm going to say this time it's a formula, and in here my formula code is, again, putting in my range 10 to, and again I'll make that 39. So if we add new departments, I can come in here and I don't have to start from scratch. I can just add those in. In terms of the additional columns we have here, we can use comparison date formulas. So we can look at last year, for example. So if I wanted to do that, I could do new line and make this line 15, and then do, and this time say this month, oops, I think I've run out of space, so I'll just doctor that slightly, do administration this month, last year, and I can come along and repeat as above for all of those, and then in here I would just simply say minus 1M, year, 1Y, and so on and so forth. So when I'm happy with those columns, I can just say OK. And now I can actually pick them up, because if you remember, I've just drilled down from my account schedule itself, and I can say OK. Tab, and then that brings in the details for me. Now you'll notice we've missing some data here, and that's because at the moment I'm looking at 2017 and there isn't data for 2017. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to use the previous period little toggles at the top there, and I can go back into previous months. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of data as far as sales are concerned, so there's not a lot coming through from there, but I'm sure you can understand how that works. Okay, so what we'll have a look at now is we will just pop to one of those that we were looking at earlier, which will have a bit more information. So if we go into the overview, okay, and from here you'll notice on our ribbon at the top, on the actions ribbon, we can send this to Excel by just simply clicking on the export to Excel icon. So I then have a choice. Do I want to create a new document or update an existing one? In this case, I'll just create a new document. And you'll notice down the bottom of my screen, my Excel icon is flashing away at me. And here now is exactly that account schedule as we saw earlier from the print preview. So you'll notice even in Excel, you still get the various attributes coming through, as in emboldening and underlining. So you have full choice on how you want your account schedule to appear, both from a print and from an Excel point of view. And of course, this is very useful if you have users or people, that aren't users of Navision and you still want to share the data with them. So we've had a look at account schedules and how we can create our account schedule and our columns that we want to apply to any number of account schedules. They are shareable between them. But on our columns, if you remember, we were only looking at our two global dimensions, in this case our department and project. Mind went blank for the moment. So how do we incorporate, for those of us that have more than just our two global dimensions, how can we incorporate those other dimensions, those what are called the shortcut dimensions? So I'm just going to close that screen down. And what we will have a look at now is these things called analysis views. So what are they? Well, analysis views, just like account schedules, you can have any number set up within Navision and you can determine how and what dimensions you want to use. So we're going to incorporate this one called area. So just going to have a little look at that. So I will just, with my cursor on the area view, I will just go to edit, and within here, very simple, we give it a code, we specify which GL accounts we're looking at, and then in the dimension tab we say which dimensions that we want to include for this particular analysis view. So in this case we've said department, area and customer group. So department being the only global that we are going to be using here. So once that's set up, we can then, from our account schedules, have a look at how we can incorporate that into our account schedules. So here we have sales area, sales by areas. We have a column layout called area, And this is where we are attaching that analysis view, again called area, so that we can actually pull in those details as well. So this time, when we go to overview, we can see, in this case, we have our various lines that have been set up, and at the moment we're just viewing it by the default column. So, oh, there it is. I'll pick up the area columns tab, or click into the field, which now brings in Europe, North, South, total, and total Americas, the areas that are set up as those dimensions. We will look at, again, I'll put in my date range. We can change our filter by going back a period or forward a period, dependent on where we are. Okay. And of course, what's important, which we haven't seen up to now, is we can go and investigate what has actually made up the values that we are seeing. So by simply clicking into a value, we have our little clips here to take us through to the details that are making up our figure. So here we are is the total line. So if I click now into the net change, and it will detail all the entries that have made up that particular value. So we can check back and see exactly what has caused that figure to be displayed. So very easy now to incorporate those additional dimension codes. But of course, while we're here, we can still, if we want to, because we're showing it by area, we might want to actually look at it only from a particular dimensional view from our other two dimensions that we have set up on the analysis view. So it might be that I want to do it through just, for example, production. I'm not expecting many things to come through on this, and indeed not. But we have the ability to fine-tune our view, even though we're looking at it from an area point of view. One that's better might be to do perhaps large companies. Okay, so sales in raw materials in domestic. We can see Northern Europe has sailed up in front of anybody else. Anyway, hopefully you can see potentially how this might be useful to you in your organisation. So just to recap, we have had a quick look at the existing functionality by using the balance by dimension from our chart of accounts, and the ability where we can change our headings to look through periods or through our dimension codes. We've had a look at one of the reports, the trial balance by period, and how we can print that out. And then we've been through the account schedules, how to print up from one that we had already set up, and then how we can export from our account schedules into Excel. We've created our new account schedule, and we've looked at the rows and how we can insert them by using the insert GL function, the line attributes, and how we can copy and rename the rows once we have generated our account schedule. We've had a look at the column setup and how we can incorporate budgets, and we can even do it from a dimensional point of view. We've seen how we can drill down and look at the ledger entries, and again we can export to Excel. And then for those of us who have more than just two global dimensions, we've had a look at the analysis views and how we can incorporate those in to our existing account schedules. So I do hope you've enjoyed this session this morning, and I look forward to meeting you all again on the next one.